Hey guys, you're watching Reader Recap.
Weather is really bad and it's raining heavily. Our protagonist works in a bookstore and is thinking to himself that he might not get any customers today because of the weather. But what if somebody forgot an umbrella? They might have to find a place to stay while the rain goes away, our protagonist thinks, and by offering them a warm place and being nice to them, they will probably buy some books as well. Now, we can see a mysterious woman out on the streets, in the heavy rain, single-handedly fighting and finishing off multiple thugs. Even though she managed to beat all of them, she still got injured and is thinking she needs a place to hide while her self-healing takes care of her wounds. She then stumbles upon the bookstore of our protagonist. Because this was the only bookstore working in this bad weather, she wasn't sure if it is a trap for her, or maybe destiny, that she can go in and hide while waiting to heal. After entering the bookstore, our protagonist welcomes her kindly, complimenting her looks and bravery because she was woken up in this awful weather. He is plotting in his mind what kind of books she might need and what approach he needs to have to sell her a lot of books. He also offered her a towel and turned on the heating, which was all suspicious to her because usually bookstores aren't as equipped as this one is. She starts to think if he belongs to some enemy faction because he definitely didn't have regular book clerk vibes. He starts talking about books, which confuses her a little bit, since she couldn't figure out whether he is actually friendly or an enemy in disguise. She can read his body language, and she realizes he is using psychological tricks on her, but she still doesn't understand why exactly. He offers her a seat and a hot beverage, and she tells him she was a victim of a betrayal. Now two of them are having different thoughts. She is still trying to figure out if he is the enemy, and he is trying to understand her situation so he can sell her books. After she mentioned she was betrayed, he wanted to encourage her by saying that maybe she should take some positives from it and learn how to understand people better. She said he is right, but that she already lost so much and can only see the ugly side of humanity now. So he gives her another piece of advice again, saying that in the future she shouldn't feel remorse for people who harmed her already, even if they were a really close person to her before. This makes her even more suspicious of him, but she goes along with him, asking what else should she do, and he tells her to exact vengeance. She shouldn't be soft on people who hurt her. In his mind, he is still thinking about the strategies of what to say to her to prepare for buying books from him. But she got surprised by this answer, saying that she isn't mentally prepared to do evil things like that yet. And all of a sudden he tells her, maybe you need to buy this book to learn more. She gets even more surprised again, and even confused now, because she doesn't understand why he is recommending her a book all of a sudden, whilst he is just trying to sell her book because that's good for his business. She agrees to buy the book, and he gives her a library card to fill out, and after seeing her name, he realizes she is the only daughter of a rich tycoon and sees another great business opportunity to sell her even more books in the future. As she was leaving, he gave her an umbrella, and she told him that maybe they could get to know each other a little bit more. Then he realized that his business strategy might have been perceived as flirting by her, but it's better to go with the flow, so he tells her his name, Lin Jie. As they're saying goodbyes, she's still suspicious of him, while he is just happy that he managed to sell a book today and do good business. As she's walking in the rainy street, she is thinking that maybe he gave her an order to finish off the traitor and afterwards come back to him to return the umbrella, but to actually come back after doing this deed. But all of a sudden, a mysterious figure of a man pops up behind her. But before we get to learn more about him, we learn more about our protagonist, Lin Jie's past. While he was sorting books, he found an old book written by himself, which woke up some memories in him of his past. And he remembered his old life when he was an ordinary man who liked reading books so much that girls that used to work with him didn't understand him at all. After getting back to his home, we can see a magical ring in his room, and this ring was conjured by Lin himself. He strikes it down with his fist, saying his wish, "Please let me own all the books in the world." Nothing happened, or so it seemed. He didn't realize, but behind him a demon appeared, who created a portal door to another dimension, and Lin immediately knew if he goes through the door, he will own every book in the world, but will not be able to go back to Earth ever again. Without any hesitation, he went through the door and was living as a book clerk for the last 3 years ever since then, in a different world. But he didn't mind at all. He actually liked it very much because he could read an endless supply of books, and he even helped his customers with their life situations by giving them proper books. Remember the lady that just bought a book from him? and realized besides her, he didn't have customers in a long time. Now we go back to her and the mystery man on the street. She was walking right past him but realized that something was off since she couldn't move her hand at all. At that moment, the mysterious man turned around and said, "Oh, I see. It's that book." The blood in her veins froze as she realized something about that man. The rain was still falling heavily. And now we go back to Lin Jie sitting in his library with a new visitor, who was the mysterious man from a moment ago. But our protagonist already knew this man. His name was Old Wild, and he was there to return a book he previously borrowed. Two of them started talking about a book that Old Wild borrowed, and Lin Jie said the book was written by a great author who passed away. The girl was spying this from the outside, and she realized that Old Wild is actually a high-level black mage, ranked destructive. There were 4 ranks: abnormal, panicky, destructive, and indestructible. Old Wild's real name was Frank Wild, and he was famous for the mask he wears and being half serpent-blooded mage. He fought against one of the 10 holy knights of the order and destroyed an area of 10 kilometers wide, hence the title Destructive. In this city, there aren't even 10 destructive mages, and in the entire world, less than 100. As the girl walked away, she was thinking about how Lin can just casually talk with someone of that power as well. Now we go back into the bookshop, where Lin is thinking to himself that Old Wild is his regular customer and he needs to be treated accordingly. Old Wild was a loner. Even though he had 2 kids, they didn't treat him well. His wife left him and his colleagues were scared of him because of the way that he looks. Lin remembered when he met Old Wild for the first time 2 years ago. When Old Wild first entered the shop, he intrigued our protagonist both with his looks and his demeanor, and he was also carrying a mysterious book of high value with him. Lin offered him tea, which Wild refused because he looked scary and didn't want to take his robes, but Lin said he doesn't focus on the looks but on the heart, and Old Wild actually took off his robes, showing his scary looks. However, Lin found him more weird and scary because of the mask that he wore. Lin turned on his business and brain and tried to figure out the best approach to make Wild his regular customer. So firstly, he asks him about the book that the old man brought, because it was a book about magical and dying languages. Wild was surprised because Lin could feel the magic from the book, which even other destructive mutants couldn't feel. So as our girl from the beginning of the story, Old Wild got suspicious of Lin and decided to proceed with caution. They started talking about the book, and Wild pretended as if he didn't know much about it, but said he was studying those languages, and then he asked Lin to teach him more about it. This was a huge business opportunity for our protagonist, and he offered Wild a new book to read. This book was about the most complex dialect in China. The book's name was Devil's Language, and Old Wild immediately realized that, and got extremely excited about it. Lin was happy that he could interest him in the book, and Wild asked how he managed to obtain such a rare book. Lin couldn't tell the truth about the book being from his original world, so he had to lie and say it's from a splendid civilization. Lin got a bit sad that he can't go back to Earth again. However, Wild noticed nostalgia in Lin's voice when he was describing this ancient and splendid civilization, and Wild thought that if Lin is from this civilization, he's probably a terrifying individual. After they introduced themselves back to present, Wild said thanks to the Devil's Language book, he started doing new research, and he needs a new book on the topic. Lin was completely oblivious to Wild's intentions, but his business instinct kicked in again, and he wanted to offer him a new book to read.
Thanks for watching.